Good evening. I'd like to call the City Council meeting of the City of Port Richey to order this 11th day of March, the year 2014. If you will all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Certainly. Mayor Eloise Taylor.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Colombo.
Here.
Councilman Steve O'Neill. Here. Councilwoman Nancy Britton.
Here.
Councilman Terrence Rowe.
Here.
City Attorney Joseph Public.
Here.
And City Manager Tom O'Neill.
Here.
All right, the first item is the approval of City Council regular meeting minutes of February 25th, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, additions, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes. Any announcements from the city manager or the city attorney?
Yes, briefly, Madam Mayor. In front of you tonight, I have an email from Joe Wagner of Taylor Engineering. At the Port Authority Board meeting, I believe on the 18th, the matter of the waterway signage was discussed, and Board Member Carl Roth, who later will present their report, wrote an email regarding the waterway signage and several comments regarding the placement of certain signs. As you're aware, we're awaiting a final approval of a permit to mobilize our contractor to move certain signs on the river, and this specific response is in front of you tonight regarding that signage. And I wanted to add that I certainly will provide a copy to Mr. Roth and any members of the Port Authority Board that would desire one.
Mr. Public?
Nothing from you this evening, Mayor.
All right, comments from the public. Mr. Brown?
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. Mayor Taylor, Attorney Public, and council members. I gave you each 2 letters today. I will expect answers to my questions in those letters at the March 25th meeting. So you got 2 weeks to look them over and decide what to do. At the February 25th meeting, I asked 2 questions. What will code enforcement do about the fence across the 5-foot wide public easement around the lake? And what will be done about the fence that protrudes 3 feet 4 inches into the lake? Have you looked into that and decided what will be done about the fence on the easement and the fence that sticks out into the lake? Anybody?
Mr. Brown, we can't, in this part of the meeting, we can't really respond and answer your questions. This is information for council, and we certainly are aware of your issues, but I think we probably need to have a item on the agenda to respond to those, or have the city manager do a response.
Can you send me a response?
If that's what you would like, yes.
That'll work. Okay. That's
Okay.
it.
All right, thank you. Matthew Todd.
Matthew Todd, 513 Mallet Drive. Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor. Last council meeting, I addressed the problem with my water problems, and I want to appreciate the city coming down and doing some investigating to the aspects of that. I did take a water sample, and I sent it out to the state and county. I'm waiting for them results to come back. As the meantime, this is about the 5th time I've replaced my toilets, and I've had a cleaning agency to come in to repair my toilets. Anybody that wants to see them, and the public, if they want to see them, can come down, and you're welcome to my house, just like you invited me to yours, Vice Mayor. You can come down and see if I got a legitimate complaint. Now, as far as you all saying that the water's okay, and it's okay to raise the prices of the water up, you can come up with a better answer than that. I mean, are you for the people are used for the people in this city, or are you all? Do you own the water department yourself and you're taking paychecks out of it? Because that's the direction you're sending me and the residents out here in the city. I'm concerned about the residents and myself. But the thing is, you know, trash on the street, you gotta come up here and make a complaint. This gentleman here that works the public works and the utilities department, I shouldn't have to come up here as a taxpayer and complain. He drives around, does nothing. Let him get in the truck and his foreman's and get around and do what's supposed to be done. There's no reason for this. There's no reason. And as far as water, there's no problem with the water. Why don't you let the public know what you all pay in bottled water? Look what you all have, bottled water. Why do you have bottled water if our water's so great? Why does the city workers have water that they put in their coolers every morning? But if the water's so good, why ain't you? I'll go get you some tap water and let you all drink it if it's so good. And I guarantee you what, you don't have excuse, or it'll be some dumb comment it's ridiculous. I don't have the patience to deal with ignorance. Something needs to be done, and Councilman Britton, Nancy Britton, excuse me, I'm a little upset, but when the tests come, I appreciate your interest in it, and I will forward them to you as soon as possible. I'm not going to go by what your test results go. I'm not trying to be ignorant to anything. I respect every single one of you. And I'm not trying to be a jerk to nobody, but we got issues here. Whether it's in the water problem or if it's in the pipes. Something's got to be done. And as far as raising the rates, there's no reason for it. Anytime rates are raised, it's mistakes in management. It's a proven fact. I've been in business for years. I know what it is. When you raise rates and you increase something, it's an end of mismanagement. Something needs to be done about it. As Chief Brown, I want to thank you for your presence with the police up and down the street. Thank you very much.
Kathy Todd.
Hello, evening. I'm Kathy Todd, 5113 Mallet Drive, and as you're aware of my husband, I'd just like to put out that, actually, first of all, I appreciate, we see the force. We see they're out there. It's great. You know, you're doing a great job, and I appreciate that. I was over at the firehouse, and I talked to those gentlemen, and I know there's some issues that they need some more equipment, and there's some things that we can do to get them some funds or whatever to help them, but great group of guys. They're very, very, I appreciated every one of them. And I just wanted to say, I know, most of you know, I am running for mayor also. And I know it's election time, and I know things can be said, and things can get harsh, and things can get mean. I'm not that way. The facts are the facts, the truth is the truth, and I do like police officers. I am a police officer. There's a rumor out there that I don't like our police force. I love our police force. My husband and I have said many times we will help our police force as much as we can. So I just want to put that out and thank every one of you.
Anyone else from the audience wishing to speak? Yes, Ms. Gray.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor.
Speak up for me,
I'm
Phyllis.
sorry. You know, I'm a drama major, Mayor. You'd never know it now, right? Phyllis Gray, San Pebble. Welcome to Port Richey, deja vu. It seems to me that over the past few weeks, since the qualifying for the election, things that happened in the past have now surfaced again. There have been signs up and down for the mayor's opposition. There have been signs for the mayor. I personally put them there. They're no longer there. I put more signs out on Sunday. This is Tuesday evening. The signs are down, gone. Now this is the nonsense that went on a few years ago, if you remember. Mayor Taylor, you and I were around. I think Miss Britton was around. It's not pretty. It's ugly. And it's going to bring the city down again. Now, it's interesting to hear that your opposing candidate, Mayor Taylor, loves the police. Her campaign manager is a man that did everything in his power several years ago to bring down the police department, to the point where Mr. Priest and I, who remember it well, rode on the streets in a bus with a bullhorn to save our police and save our city. And that's exactly what's going to happen again. That's what's going to happen again. All the good that this council has done is going to be scrutinized, chopped up, accusations, innuendos, buzzwords. People love buzzwords. Buzzwords. And the person who is heading the campaign is the master of buzzwords. So I ask you, council, and I ask you, Mayor Taylor, to please remain the good servants that you are and have been, and do not reduce yourselves, and certainly not you, Mayor Taylor, because you wouldn't do it. Don't reduce yourselves to the level of these people who say they love the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Priest.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Jim Priest, 5100 Sunset Boulevard. I live on the south side of the river, on Sunset Boulevard, obviously. Over a year ago, Pat Stewart was at my house, and actually the gentleman who runs the water department in here, and we openly discussed the issues that we had with our water. I don't know exactly what has transpired since then. All I can tell you is I don't have water problems anymore. Haven't had them for quite some period of time now. Not an advocate of the irrigation rate. Been up here and spoke on that a number of times. But I haven't had a water issue per se, quality of water, in quite some period of time now. Whatever effort was made to straighten it out has been successful. There's a lot of rhetoric going on now. I hated to see this. This council has been very diligent at keeping their differences to themselves, expressing when they had an opinion that may not favor one or the other, but we're able to work through it. What's going on right now, and to reiterate what Ms. Gray had just said, reckons to the past, reckons to 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and it got bloody ugly here. We were on the front page of every rag that existed in Pasco County. We were on every news agency there was, and the shame is I see it returning. When you're getting calls, at least personally getting calls from certain news agencies, what's going on in Port Richey, that's a scary sight again. It really is. A lot of the old culprits are back up again. I'm not going to get into naming names and all this such in here. You all know who you are. You know you're trying to win an election in here, but you need to do it on the morals of what you can do, what you physically have the capability of managing and handling. You need to be able to demonstrate that you are better than what exists up there right now, and I have not seen that. I'm more than willing to listen to anybody that provides a salient thought, a salient argument to a position, but to get down the way it is right now is pure ugliness. It's a reiteration of what happened historically in this town, and I know we fought for a long time to get it from going down those roads again, and I'm sad to say I see it happening again now.
Anyone else? You had your chance.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? All right, seeing none, I'll close it to the public and bring it back. Yes, ma'am, come on.
Hi, my name is Claudia Smith, and I'm on Candlelight Court.
I'm
I've lived
sorry, couldn't hear you.
Claudia Smith, Candlelight Court.
Thank you.
I've been in Port Richey for 5 years. We bought a house, and I tried not to say anything. I just came today to just observe, but there's some things that either y'all are in denial, but number one, we have a water problem. A couple of years ago, I went through a really rough health because of the water. It was orange for a long time. Now, it's clear, but I still get orange circles in my toilet. So we still have a water problem. I don't want to say anybody is lying or whatever, but maybe they're just lucky. I don't know. Second of all, the police, thank you so much. They come through our neighborhood regularly, and it's great to see them, and they're great people. They really are. And it makes me feel safe. The signs, I was just telling my husband tonight as we were coming here, the signs are coming and they're going, and they're coming and they're going. This is just dirty. I mean, come on. I don't have a history with you guys. I don't know what happened 10 years ago. I can only tell you what I've seen the last few years. And it's a great little community, but when I tell people here lately that I live in Port Richey, do you know what I get? I get eye rolling, and I'm proud to live here. So I just want to say either you're not listening or you're in the denial, but we have some problems. Candlelight Court with our little lake, my realtor said to us, my husband loves to fish, has caught fish and lets them go, always has done that. But he just loves the activity. So we were told, the lake, you can fish in that lake. We were thrilled. Since we moved in, there is a lady and another family across the street. They call the police all the time. 12-year-old kids. They come and they stand there, and she calls the police. We had Kathy Todd and her husband Saturday visiting in the neighborhood with my husband. She called the police. We got a problem, people. Please help us. Open your ears, open your eyes, and realize who you represent. Me. And I want to live here, and I want to be happy, and I want to be supportive of all you guys, but help me be that way. I can't do it by myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, the city manager would like you to give the city clerk your contact information, your address and your phone, please. All right, comments from mayor and council. Let me lead it off tonight. Hopefully to put some facts on some issues. Last meeting on February 25th, 2014, Councilman Rowe raised some disturbing allegations about water quality, specifically about water quality in his home. I stated at that last meeting the efforts taken by our city and our city manager, Mr. O'Neill, in the last year to address problems that customers had and problems with our water system. What I'm going to say tonight is a reiteration to some degree of the points I made last time. But I remind you that the city's response to past complaints of water issues has been prompt and extremely proactive. We have, in those customers that were on the end of the water supply lines, we have made prompt efforts to flush those lines to clear up the problems. When it became obvious to the latter part of last year that there was some quality issues by citizens, we decreased the pumping at the wells. We were experiencing saltwater intrusion, and that was partly causing the degradation of the water quality and the problems our residents and our customers were having. This city has worked very hard for our residents to address issues of water quality. Those issues, I suggest to you, have been largely resolved. They were resolved last year with the steps we took. So it came as some surprise to me that Mr. Rowe raised the issue again last meeting about poor quality of water, in particular, that he was experiencing. And I want to simply address some information and facts that we have now before us to suggest that the claims made by Mr. Rowe simply do not stand up to scrutiny, and they do not stand up to the facts. Here are the facts. Mr. Rowe complained on February 18th, 2014, and it is the only complaint received by this city this year about water quality. That is a fact. A city utility crew was dispatched that day to investigate the problem. Mr. Rowe was not at home at the time, and samples were taken at his outside tap. Those test results showed water that was clear, without any high levels of any contaminants, including iron and chlorine, whatever they tested for. Mr. Rowe did not contact the city with any additional complaints about his water after the initial complaint on February 18th, either before last meeting or to date. Instead, Mr. Rowe chose to raise that issue and raise his allegations at a public meeting. And I simply want to offer for your consideration, and I think most members of council have these documents, a number of documents that substantiate that there was no water quality problem at the Rowe residence. And secondly, that the water quality in the city of Port Richey before Mr. Rowe's complaint and after the samples taken and tested found his water to be acceptable. Thus, I think the facts show that there is not currently, nor has there been, a problem with water quality within the city's water system this year. Again, I will not negate the fact that there have been problems, but my message to you is simply that the city has tried very hard to address those problems. And I make these statements based upon facts that I believe substantiate my position. We have a series of documents, and I have copies here. The first one is the City Water Department Service Order dated February 18th, 2014, in response to Terry Rowe's complaint of February 18th, 2014. That is the very same day that the complaint was filed. The utility department went out, found the water was clear and within acceptable standards. The service order of that date also indicates an investigation or a visit to the residence of Carl Roth, whom Mr. Rowe indicated also was experiencing some problems. At Mr. Roth's house, the utility department found the same results. The water was clear and there were not any problems. The second bit of documentation is that, or evidence to support the city's investigation and work on this issue of water quality, was a sample tap on the distribution main servicing the Rowe household was installed, and water samples were taken and tested for drinking water parameters under the Florida Administrative Code, and bacteriological scan was also performed. Samples were taken on March 5th, 2014, on Old Post and Mallet. And the report we have from Pasco County Environmental Laboratory for bacteriological results found that there was no total coliform bacteria present either on Old Post Road sample or the Mallet Drive locations. The third test involved testing samples again at the same locations, Old Post Road and Mallet Drive, and this time on March 6th. And the report from the Pasco County Environmental Laboratory again shows no coliform bacterial present. We have two additional testing results that are the result of the standard testing that is done by the city. Routine in nature, to determine the water quality in compliance with the requirements of their duty under their license. And on February 11th, again, routine city testing was done. And what it substantiates or shows that it tested for some byproducts of when chlorine is added to the water. They're abbreviated and known as TTHMs and HAASs, or trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids. Those testings showed that the water was in compliance and well below the maximum contamination or contaminant levels for public drinking water standards set by the state of Florida and the Florida Administrative Code. There is another test that the city routinely ran on February 19th. Note that the first test was before any complaints were registered by Mr. Rowe, and the second test on February 19th was after the complaint was registered. But again, these reports were done in, as I understand it, the standard operation of city to monitor its water quality. Sample was taken from each of the city's wells. In addition, there were additional samples randomly at random points in the distribution system. And again, Advanced Environmental Laboratories report showed there was no coliform bacteria present. It also measured the maximum contaminant level of the total dissolved solids. And again, 500 milligrams per liter is the standard that is allowed. And the report found that our water was at 350 milligrams per liter. That figure is well within the standards, but also a marked improvement in the city's water quality from what it was several years ago. Several years ago, the city, on a routine basis, asked for an exemption from the standards because it was not conforming to the standards. That is not the case presently. The improvement in part is a result of the fact that we have decreased pumping at our major wells because of the problem we're experiencing with saltwater intrusion. So all the reports suggest that our water quality is within the standards required, that it is improved from what it was last year or several years ago, and that the city has made a concerted effort to ensure and improve the water quality in this city. Not only do the tests show that, but in addition, we have embarked on an effort to improve the sewer system, the water main delivery system, with the project that was completed last year on Old Post Road, and we have committed to the future for water main improvements in Harbor Isles. The facts show that the poor water quality allegations are simply not substantiated by the facts. And I'll leave it at that. Anyone else from council?
I've got a few things, but
Go
it's
ahead.
not specifically the water. I'm sure we're going to get some talk of water in a little bit as well. Senate Bill 638 or House Bill 629, I just, and maybe somebody knows, but this has to do with the donation collection receptacles. I know this is popular in other cities. The chief might have heard of this if you've got any comments, but I guess the ruling coming up is it's supposed to be labeled so that people know that I mean, obviously the donations will occur, but these are obviously being sold later after these receptacles are emptied.
That's correct, and I understand that the bills have not identified the exact wording that they want on those receptacles, so
Right.
we're waiting for the final bill to come out.
Which hopefully should come soon. I was going to make reference to the reports that we've received. We've obviously gotten emails pertaining to the water quality reports. I won't say any more on that. The mayor spoke of that. The next CRA, Tammy, do we have a date on our CRA meeting next?
I don't have one right now, sir, but
That's
we can
okay.
certainly schedule one whenever council sees
Okay.
that they'd like to have it.
We received, I don't know if any of the council got to look at some of the pictures of the limestone fishing pier. It's come up, and we'll talk about it in the CRA. But lots of photos and lots of problems. There wasn't a said cost associated with these. I'm sure that's going to be there, but they did a very nice job in really giving the fishing pier a real look. Again, several pictures if you haven't seen them already. I appreciate that. Pam, I don't know if there is any impact with the reduction in state communications service tax. I don't know that impacts the municipalities. I don't
Right
know if
now,
you've
we
heard
are
any of that.
receiving what we had anticipated for this current budget, but we certainly will be looking at that for next budget.
It's supposed to be maybe a 2% reduction from what
Yeah, I'm
I
not
read.
seeing that. I'm seeing well, we will only budget 95% of what we anticipate anyhow, so
Okay.
we're on track with what we anticipated for the budget.
Okay. I'm thinking another meeting, we may have something related to the traffic light situation. There has been, obviously, St. Petersburg had chosen to make a move in another direction, but it may be something. Chief, if you want to talk about it, that's fine. I was just going to note if it needs to be later an agenda item to cover some particular statistics and numbers and so forth, I would like to see that.
We are on daily conversations with the companies involved in the missing camera that was removed for the construction. As of last Friday, DOT has submitted their final building plans for that site, and once those plans are finalized by DOT, the camera will be reinstalled. I don't foresee it being in the next week or two, but I've been told by DOT itself that it's coming and it should be back in a couple of weeks. The bill that St. Petersburg City Council removed theirs.
Right, right. Yeah, after looking at, I guess, their numbers, et cetera. They didn't say too much more about it, but I just want to note, I look at some of the pages, but there is some obvious impact to the municipalities in relation to police and fire pensions being talked about. That we're aware, there's some numbers that go along with that. I won't talk about that. The permit approval for the river signage, I know that's going to be talked about here shortly. And Tom, maybe an update as far as the Gulfland Mobile Home Park, a demolition update. Doesn't have to be now, but you know, maybe at some point later. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Just a brief comment, because I'm figuring you're probably going to be a little less than brief, but on water, since it was brought up. Lots of people drink bottled water because bottled water, frankly, is municipal water from wherever. In the case of Zephyr Hills, is from Zephyr Hills. And then it goes through a multitude of filtering processes beyond that. It's filtered, they have reverse osmosis, they have ultraviolet radiation. They go to an extraordinary length to make their water, which is good water, clean water. That doesn't mean that the water Zephyr Hills is producing is bad water. It means that there is, I don't know of any place, and I'm sure there is in the world somewhere, I surely don't know of any place on the west coast of Florida where the water quality is going to meet straight out of the tap, or even out of the ground for that matter, the water quality of bottled water. I've lived all the way from Pasco County down to Paso Grill. And Florida and the West Coast water has been known for two things. It's been known for being hard water, it's been known for having lime, and it's been known for having iron in it. And was that a call for me, Phyllis? I'll take it. You know, I mean, that's all right. Yeah, okay. Okay. I actually, that was it. Yeah, I actually pocket dialed you, yeah. But the point I was also going to add, Mr. Todd, and for Mr. Priest and those of us who are on the south side of the city, as has been noted before, we still got iron pipes down in our neck of the woods. And that iron does get in the water. And that iron will stain, apparently, you know, eventually. Yeah, there's a reason why they sell toilet bowl cleaner, and there's a reason why I buy it and use it, is that if you have hard water, you're gonna get some stains sooner or later. But the quality of the water that has been coming out of my taps has been, since we went through what we went through, we reduced the pumping, and we brought in an engineer at that time and made other recommendations that we have followed at that point. I have never had as clear, consistent water at my house for the almost 10 years I've lived there as I have in the last several months. So that's my statement on water. Other than that, welcome everybody and let's have fun.
I just got a quick one. Well, I've been here 28 years, and in 28 years, I feel the same way. The water's gotten, wow, very, very good, because I've taken pictures of my tub water before. So I wasn't happy myself, but we have come a long way. The only thing I just wanted to let everybody know is about the Gus Bilirakis. I get an email from him, and the House passed on March 4th, passed the Bigger Waters Act, and that is the H.R. 3370 Homeowners Flood Act. So it's going to give some relief to the citizens of Port Richey for their flood insurance rates. I just asked about my re-rate, and I think my flood insurance went up $250, but I'm not 100% sure that since this passed and whether or not it's going to pass again, whether or not that rate might drop a little bit. So that's good news for Port Richey, thank goodness. So kudos to Gus Bilirakis for that one, because he's really worked hard on that, and I'm sure we all appreciate his efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Rowe?
I hardly know where to start, but I guess no one has mentioned this yet. Ellen Posovic, who was the city manager here for a number of years, and assistant city manager, has died this week. Now, we did not part on the best of terms, but I am not vindictive in any way, shape, or form. And I appreciate the services that people put to the city. And she did perform a service here. She was well liked. So I would like to offer up a minute of silence on her behalf. That being said, I guess I'll address the fence issue. I'm sorry Mr. Brown has left already. I don't believe he's out there. But I find it amazing. I believe he's been here 3 or 4 times and still no answer to his fence problem. No emails across our email system about the fence. I read the statute last meeting about the violation of the fence. Nothing being done. Nothing being talked about. I find that to be unacceptable. And talking about acceptable, I'll go back to my water issue. Acceptable. That's a good term. What's not acceptable is when one of my colleagues would insinuate to the point that I'm lying about my water.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Please don't do that anymore. That is probably not proper decorum. I brought a picture because of a situation that had become intolerable. This isn't something that goes on every day. These are what had been termed events. I talked to SwiftMud, and SwiftMud tells me that anybody who would chase that water complaint where it was originally found would not find it because it has moved on down the line. I assure you, Mayor, I did not take a coffee pot full of coffee and pour it in my toilet just for kicks. This is not something I do, and I expected, I think, better support out of my colleagues up here. I did what I did because I finally got your attention. Is this happening all the time? No. But I bet if I had emptied that tank and poured it in front of you, you wouldn't drink it. You wouldn't wash with it. You wouldn't do any laundry with it. I'm very disappointed that this council seems to want to ignore problems that are blatantly in front of them. I don't like this water problem any more than you do. It's an embarrassment to the city. But every now and then, we get these events. And I'm hearing from a lot of the people in town about their laundry. And I'll tell you, you are very lucky I kept my wife at home tonight because she was going to unload on you about her laundry. She is one of the most unhappy people in town because when she fills that basin in the washing machine, quite often it's brown. I think we can do better. We have done better. It's amazing that when we were blending all this water from Newport Richey on a major scale, that all of a sudden the water quality really got a lot better. That tells me something's going on in our water department. I said before, I don't know what it is. I don't really care. I am up here for one person, and that is for one reason, and that is to represent the people of this city. And the people of this city are complaining about their water. I'm not saying it's undrinkable on a whole scale. I'm saying that we are having events. It's time we look at this utility. It is time we get past this, find out what's going on. If it's saltwater intrusion, let's deal with it constantly. We can't go on like this pretending that something's not happening. I guarantee you, I did not put that picture up here for kicks, and I did not like having to do it, but it got your attention. If this isn't a problem, what is making the water brown? Well, from what I'm finding out from the pros, we've got rust problems and God knows what other problems, and I want to head that off so it's not happening. If we got to change green sand filters, then let's do it. It's expensive. That's probably why we haven't done it. But all that being said, I've been talking about this water for a year. I guess people thought I was kidding, or they just weren't paying attention. You know, it's really sad. Everybody tells me it's amazing that they can't get anybody to run for council anymore. Well, when you're attacked up here like this, it's a pretty good reason why people don't want to run for council. I mean, myself, I could just as well get up and leave this chamber right now and say, the heck with it. These people are going to cover themselves with glory about their water and how great it is while other people are suffering, having to drink it, use it. I know those water reports. I've seen them. It's wonderful. They're clean. I'm glad of it because I got to drink that stuff. I've got to wash with it every day, so I'm glad it's clean. But the next time I get another water issue, I'm not going to be calling the city again. I've had it. So if you find that to be poor judgment on my part, you'll have to live with it because I'm here to serve the citizens of the city. Along with being a resident myself, I don't appreciate the kind of water that was in that tank and that I showed you a picture of, and I would at least consider it halfway decent of you to accept that picture as being a fact. As we were saying, it's not a fact. Well, pictures do not lie. Pictures are facts.
All right, finally, I'd like to give you an update on the dredging efforts that we have embarked on. I met with, along with some people from the city, a manufacturer of dredging equipment in the last several weeks. The equipment looks like that it can do the dredging job for about half the cost of the older traditional kind of equipment. We are working to submit some additional information as the city for federal grant for improvement of waterways and dredging. And we are actively seeking the assistance of people in other states who've been successful in obtaining other federal grants. And lastly, we are in the process of setting up an appointment with some other governmental officials and other Florida communities who have been active in the recent past in dredging for their insight and expertise so that we can continue to move forward with hopefully finding some ways for more economical ways to address the waterways, as well as maybe some federal monies out there to help us, to assist us in that endeavor. All right, moving on. We have reports from boards and committees. The Port Authority Board, Mr. Roth.
Madam Mayor, before we go on,
And it's not open for your discussion for the public right now.
Carl Roth, 8031 Island Drive, issuing the report on the February 18th Port Authority Board meeting that we held. There were several items that we wanted to update the council on that we thought was important for you to know. I believe at the last meeting, Chairman Massad, it wasn't a formal update from the board, but Chairman Massad had referenced that we had a concern that the city is communicating to the public via the website and the newsletter that the waterway signage is complete, but that's not true. Based on the U.S. Coast Guard letter of October 29th, 2013, letter of no objections, we have summarized what we believe are the necessary actions that need to be taken. The letter that Mr. O'Neill referenced earlier, we have not received copies of that yet, so we don't know what that includes. So this is based on the previous information that we had available. Basically, in the documents, starting on page 8 in your packet, we highlighted the critical things that we thought were most important. Item 1, U.S. Coast Guard red day beacon 12. We have marks on that need to be removed according to the U.S. Coast Guard letter. Item 2, the red U.S. Coast Guard day beacon 16. That's at the corner there near the mouth of the river. Those would need to be removed to comply with the U.S. Coast Guard letter. Currently, if those two are removed, the only mark we'll have will be at marker 13. So in order to get another signage, waterway signage there, we suggested that we may want to consider using U.S. Coast Guard day beacon 18, which is approved, and adding a sign there parallel to the channel in compliance with the standards. Item 4, new signage pilings near Coast Guard day beacon 12 and 18 on the south shore, and also on the south shore between 18 and 23, all require approval. We had talked about these. These were private marks that were put in, and they've never appeared on any Coast Guard notice to mariners. As of 2/14, the latest update, they don't appear. So essentially, those are unmarked pilings in the navigable waters of the river. And also those signage, as we talked about earlier, don't tie in with city ordinances. We think these should be considered for removal completely, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Item 5, U.S. Day Beacon 38 is kind of an interesting beast. The letter we have from the Coast Guard gives us approval to put on 36. According to the nautical charts, there's no 36 in existence. However, in the channel, there is a 36. So we need to clarify this with the Coast Guard to find out what's a legitimate marker, where we can put our signage, et cetera, to get that cleared up. And then finally, when we get it cleared up from the Coast Guard, get the approval on the marker that we want. And lastly, item 6, once we make all these subsequent changes, we would suggest that we need to get back with Florida Fish and Wildlife on the original permit approvals to make sure the Coast Guard, Fish and Wildlife, and all the regulatory authorities are all in sync on what is there and what's not. We do have one concern, however, around this, because our FDEP approval that came out in 2012, the regulatory approvals expired June 13th, 2013. So there's some additional work that may have to be done to proceed with that. So just to highlight to council, in summary, this project has cost us about $13,000 for engineering, about $19,000 for construction, plus signage. So somewhere totaling the $35,000 to $40,000 in total based on the information we have. 35% to 40% of that number is engineering or design engineering work. This project serves as an example to the city where our engineering design effort has failed to deliver the results or value to the city in a timely fashion. And this project was started, as you know, in January 2012, so it's been over 2 years and it's still not complete. One other item that I haven't heard come up in the meeting in the last few months, that is an item that I believe is directly related to the waterway signage, and I think you guys need to be aware of it. On February 12, 2014, the Pinellas and Pasco District Attorney has decided to pursue manslaughter charges against a vessel operator who caused a death in the river in September of 2013. And this is in the area of where we have our signage. The city had illegally posted the waterway signs at that time, and we're not sure what consequences this may have to the city, but we thought you should be made aware of it. Additionally, we had two other items that we wanted to highlight. One, during our February 18th meeting, we wanted to make a recommendation to council to consider investigating and installing a kiosk in Nix Park to charge for entrance fees. We believe this would help the city as far as recoup maintenance costs, expenses, as well as projects like the proposed repaving that we have on the docket, I believe, later tonight. And lastly, and it kind of plays into the notification we had on the Taylor Engineering letter, we wanted to request from council clarification what the Port Authority's role is and how we're supposed to be involved in items around the city's waterways and projects such as dredging, signage, and piers, et cetera. We've requested to be copied routinely on waterway issues and waterfront activities in the past, but that still has not occurred, and the latest issues being the latest Taylor Engineering. So those are the three main items we had, and if you have any questions or comments, be happy to take them, and my culprit in crime here, Jennifer, is available as well.
Any questions?
You said this started in January 2012?
The initial work order was let to Taylor Engineering at that date.
And when was it completed?
Well, the project's not completed yet, but are you talking about the engineering?
The basic waterway signage.
It was declared complete initially in the newsletter and the website in December of 2012.
Anything else?
Going back a little ways, because yeah, it was a little while ago. We were working on the waterfront signage project, the waterway signage project. I had assumed at that point that the Port Authority Board was pretty well involved in it. I know Terry, as Port Authority Board liaison, you were the one that was basically, to my mind, that was, you know, at the forefront of the idea of getting our signage fixed out there, along with a lot of other people. So, it's been a little while. I know that the waterway signage was discussed, and there was discussion going back between council and the subject coming to us from the Port Authority Board. I don't recall, though, how specific the activity was. I know there was some, there was a lot of discussion involved. Now, I mean, my basic opinion, to go to one of your last points, is to defining the role of the Port Authority Board. The safety of the waterways is right there. That's your role. It's in the charter. So I mean, you know, for you to be excluded from that, my nature is always to go board up on a thing like that. You know, I mean, I look for recommendations from the board, including any aspect of the recommendations, including engineering, including methodology, including whatever. You know, so I'm with you there, but I can't tell you. And Terry, you probably remember better than I do, simply because as board liaison, you were at some of the meetings, and I'm not sure, Carl, you were even on the board at that time. Were you on the board?
Well, I became on board in January of 13.
Okay, so
and
you
one
might
of the
have-
first activities was to point out the problems we had with the waterway markers.
Right. Okay. So you came on after.
It was complete.
It was complete at that point. So, you know, you can't speak to that, and Terry, maybe you can. You know, I had gone through this whole project from the perspective of it had been discussed, if not brought to us by the Port Authority Board in the first place, and that with our engineers and with our contractors, this was not going to be brain science. obviously, you found some issues that you have, and there seems to be some debate over what issues are major issues and what issues are not necessarily major issues. So, I mean, yeah, I'd kind of like this one just to go away, you know, because, because it's not the biggest thing the city has to deal with, but it's one of those nagging little things that just keeps nagging and nagging and nagging. And I'm with you. I mean, I want this to be taken care of. I know Mr. O'Neill is working with the Taylor, I'm assuming, right now, nailing down, the odds and, the bits and pieces that are hanging out there. And as you know as well as anybody, everybody's got their little finger in the pie, from the Coast Guard down to the DEP down to, Burger King, for all I know. I mean, it's just, everybody seems to have, their little piece in there. So, yep, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I'd like to see this go away. I'd like to stop talking about it, and by go away, I mean be fixed correctly, and that's certainly my point there. As far as the kiosk idea goes at Nick's Park, again, I listen to your meeting. I always do. I listen to my own meetings occasionally. I've asked I keep hearing it said that, we can put a kiosk in, but we can only charge people we can only charge all the people the same thing. We can't have a different thing for the city versus the county, all according to some alleged agreement that is floating around out there. And I've asked for that agreement, I don't know how many times. And I've never seen the agreement. I want to see that agreement, that contract, that piece of legal paper that says that. Because if it doesn't exist, I don't want to hear about it anymore.
I've been at the council meetings a little while ago when you asked for that specifically.
Yeah, and more than one. Trust me on this one. It keeps coming up, and I keep hearing it. And my basic opinion is, I don't want to make any decision on a kiosk until I know what all of our options are. Because like one of our options that's my favorite, and maybe nobody else likes it, is the idea that if you're a resident of Port Richey, you get a sticker and you get in there for free. And if you're driving your boat over from Zephyr Hills, I'll charge you $5. Because it's a city park, it's a small parking area, and the influx of all those boats into that area, as far as I'm concerned, is a problem for more than just the ramp itself or just the parking lot itself. It's the whole area. So I mean, yes, I really want to move forward in that direction. I like to see the paper, I like to see, that's one of those show me sort of things. So those are the two comments I have to make.
Yeah, we've been down that road a couple times back, even 10 years ago, and there was a screeching halt to the kiosk idea.
For just that reason, though, I mean.
There's a reason that's not going forward. I remember some issues with, having an employee there, whether or not to have, the honor system. It was just, lots of different things.
But I mean, but before one would pursue that sort of thing, again, as far as this agreement with the county or whoever it supposedly is with, as far as I'm concerned, has always been nothing but hearsay. I have never seen it. So it is it's like urban legend. It just won't die, and I really would like to see that piece of paper. And if the county can't produce that piece of paper, then as far as I'm concerned, there's no damn agreement, and we can do what we want out there, but I want to know that.
Well, that's one we need to hit.
Check that out.
I'll just say quickly, as far as Nick's Park, we have talked about that, and in order to move forward, we've already indicated what we're going to need. As far as the waterway signage, look, I think we've got to get a workshop together. I mean, Terry, you can comment on this. This is something that I know you talked about a long time ago. This issue's been going on way too long, but we've also got to consider the sides. Okay, we've got one, the city manager, we've got one, the PAB, we've got the fifth engineering company here, Taylor Engineering, as far as dredging. Look, out of all of them, I've been here 10 years. They did pretty good work. At some point, guys, we've got to get this finished, and the sides have to agree that it's done. You know, January at 12 for a 40K project, and it's dragging on the way that it is now. Let's have a workshop and get this thing done. The correspondence, again, and I want to know, Carl, because it's important, but, you know, we're hearing on the one hand that even, as Tom had indicated, hey, I'm going to get you the letter from Taylor Engineering that they provided. If you don't get what you need, you have my phone number. Okay, that's what I'll say on that one. We very much value these boards and always have as long as I've been here. They haven't always agreed. It hasn't always been an easy road, but you folks do wonderful work, and believe me, we value it here. Just the time that people put in is enormous, and the time that you folks have put in is enormous. So, you know, we've got to all get this figured out, and I don't think anybody wants to point a finger or do anything, but, you know, things that you've mentioned here, believe me, we're listening up here, and we want to get this resolved. If this is going to take a workshop, guys, let's open up these meetings. Let's get here, clear some of your I mean, nobody here is that busy. We've got to get, you know, get these things on the calendar and get them done.
Steve, have you had a chance to look at Joe Wagner's email?
I did, if I'm thinking of the same email.
The one that we can-
It's the one on the sign.
Oh, okay. Yes, I did. I did.
Well, it indicates that
And
items
he's responded as well in a previous meeting.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 of Mr. Ross' list are currently with FDEP and with FF, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, waiting for approval. And the remaining one, you know, I don't understand anything about water signage. It's beyond me. But the fifth one, he addresses that as well. So
Excuse me, could I please break in for
Sure.
a second? We were emailed these, were we not? Didn't you forward this?
Yes, I
to us in
did.
email?
Just
Have you got a copy, Mr. Roth?
Well, I didn't get it until 10-something last night, so I saw it this morning. I promptly emailed council,
I looked right
and
before I came in.
I certainly would welcome Mr. Ross' desire to have a copy. I'll send one by email tomorrow.
I think there's still, as with what Carl has mentioned and what has already been indicated, we still do have some overlap, though. I mean, there's still some things that lie within that there's either not a comment about, or there's a comment from the PAB, but not Taylor, or not, to me anyway.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I interrupted the mayor, so you were in the middle of a thought. I just kind of wanted to get it in front of Carl at the same time, so.
my only point is it appears that the suggestions from the Port Authority Board have been addressed by the engineering company in the permits that have been submitted to the state agencies, and we're waiting for approval, with the exception of item 5.
Are the, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but the day beacons and the new pilings?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The pilings in item 4 were not addressed? Is that what you're, I have not had a chance to look at the letter, so you
Okay.
seem to be familiar with it.
Fine, if you all want to have a workshop on it to complete any completion of this, I'm fine with that.
I mean, I gotta say, I find having a workshop kind of moving backwards, but I mean, that's just my approach. If nothing else, I'd like to get Port Authority Board, the city manager, the city attorney, and Joe Wagner all sitting together and hammering this out to exactly what the points are here, as opposed to a workshop, which is, you know, a workshop is to me a little broader in nature for the community as a whole to give opinions on, and there's not a lot of room for opinion here. We have beacons that we want done, and we want done correctly, and we have staff that's supposed to be able to handle that for us. I mean, that's my personal opinion. So having myself here, Nancy here, Steve here, Terry here, of course Terry, you know, is liaison to the board anyway. I don't know if that adds anything to it.
like I said, I mean, I watch all the Port Authority Board meetings on, online anyway, so I mean, I know what's going on. But, you know, it just seems to me that there's some disagreements on some areas here. And, you know, between staff, legal, Port Authority Board, and the engineers, they should be able to figure this one out. And if, you know, if what you have doesn't already address potentially 60% of it, I don't know. You know, you've just gotten an email I just handed you now. So, I mean, you know, part of the problem may be done. But, you know, I mean.
I'm in agreement with you also, because to involve us again, you all need to sit down. Carl and Mr. Roth and Joe Wagner and the Port Authority Board, and say, well, Mr. Wagner, explain this to us, this as to why, you know, we're saying this and you're saying something different. I don't agree. That has to be a smaller meeting.
Well, they already have sat down, isn't that right?
Well, I don't know
There
if-
has
No.
been a,
No,
there has
I
been a
don't-
sit-down initially with this, because I've got emails from many moons ago.
Well,
that
again, I not
stated as such.
Not to interrupt, but I am anyway. Mr. Roth was saying he came along as this was, you know, already, you know, pretty much complete. So no, he wasn't involved with it at all. He's involved with it now, and involved with it to a higher degree than anybody else on the Port Authority Board. So, you know, there is a link missing right now in that we haven't had Mr. Roth have a shot at being involved with this. And since he seems to be the person who's found the most difficulties that need to be dealt with, I'd like to see him get together with, like we said, the engineer and our lawyer and our city manager and nail this one out. Just knock it out.
We'll
Come to a
schedule that.
consensus, you know. I mean, it can be a round table type, you know. Set up a table
do.
in the middle and just, you know, just sit down and just, you know, single item meeting. That's it. Let's just get this one done.
Obviously, he has some things to digest in the lengthy, you know, response that.
Who's that?
We're seeing, Mr. Ron.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's very technical. There's a lot of things here.
Give it a little gas, a little adjective there, yeah.
All right, with regard to the kiosk issue at Nix Park, we have discussed this, and prior councils have discussed this. Let's get it on the agenda and move forward with it.
That's not a problem. What I would suggest to you is that we indeed have looked for the grant agreement, and obviously there were a lot of different people involved. The people that are looking now aren't the ones that were involved. We cannot find the grant agreement. And we've looked, Tammy has spent a lot of time trying to look for anything related to this. What we're assuming is what I've told you before. We can put a kiosk. It probably would be a good idea to include it in the budget discussions, or you can even do it before then. We have money for miscellaneous park improvements. If you desire to go there, we'll get prices on the installation. I think we can get them from the county, because the county has done it in several different areas. So we could get an idea on the cost of a kiosk and how it would operate and so forth. And we'll get that information back to you.
But
Well, you know, the national parks, state parks, other counties, Pasco County, Hernando County uses a kind of honor system where you buy a ticket, put it in your dash,
Right,
and
right.
you know, obviously, if there's ways to enforce that if people fail to buy the ticket, but
Yeah.
that seems to be like a cost-effective way to do it without a lot of manpower to monitor the lot or whatever.
Right, but you see, what keeps coming to mind for me is down in Dunedin, you know, where, you know, they've got a ramp where locals can launch and they can restrict the launching of other people. I want to know whether we can do that. If we can't find our copy of the grant, we had the grant with somebody, and then that other party has to have that copy of the grant. If they don't have that party, if that other party hasn't, if you can come to me and say, I've contacted this, you know, this agency, that agency, Pasco County, this, that, and the other, there is no copy of that grant, because I've heard people tell me that that grant's expired, that grant had a date definite at the end of it, and that grant's already expired. You know, so I hate to see us operating under the strictures of a grant that we're no longer being held to. That is preventing us from really expanding on what we're doing here. Because, you know, we can come up with a lot more creative ideas if we don't have this, you know, like I said, it's urban legend. It's been floating out there for forever. If there's a legal document binding on us, there's got to be a way to find it.
I've not been able to locate anything.
Have you, at the county level, have you tried to find out about it?
I have, I've gone down to, oh goodness.
Records.
Property appraisers through records. I haven't been able to locate anything. I've spoken with the attorney who drafted up the initial deed, who transferred it in, I think, 1986.
Right.
Has no recollection of any of that. So, I mean, it would be helpful if we knew who supposedly the grant was through. I know. Lots of things would be helpful, but from what I've found so far, I found absolutely nothing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I have no idea that there's any party that's going to come back with anything, you know, basically depending on what we decide to do here.
Did you contact Jim Matthew to see what he, because I know that he did some investigation into.
No, I had not. I spoke with
Why don't you ask him?
with Frank Gray, who actually drafted up the transfer documents, and he had some recollection of the transaction, but
Judge Gray at this point.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'll contact Mr. Matthew and see what his recollections are.
All right, yeah, I really would like to, you know, I'd like to get that one put to bed because it just, you know, like I said, it's.
Just
kinda
as a
bad.
brief comment, it's my belief that the city got a grant from the Florida Boating Improvement Fund to assist in the remedial work when the ramp was rebuilt at Nix Park. The city of Newport Richey received the same grant.
Okay.
And we did research at the time. We were considering charging for the ramp.
Right.
And those have been the basis for my previous comments, that yes, we could indeed charge for the ramp use or entrance to the park.
Right.
But we couldn't differentiate. We were told that at the
This
time.
was due to a grant from the Florida Boating Improvement Fund.
Yes,
Well, let's
yeah.
contact the Florida Boating Improvement Fund.
And we'll do that. We'll do that.
Because that's, if that's the case, that's the most likely,
Yeah.
you know, place where this grant money came from. So
We will do that.
let's turn that stone over.
Yeah.
I'd like a time certain to put it on the agenda again. Can we have it by next meeting, or do you need more time than that?
We'll put it on the agenda for next meeting, and we'll
Okay.
report to you on what we've done.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Next, we've got to report, we've got a written report from the Planning and Zoning Board.
P&Z.
Is anybody here from P&Z?
Madam Mayor?
The minutes are in our packet for our review.
Just a brief comment while you're going over this. I attended this meeting last week, and likewise, building official Bill Goldberg did. We've had several requests to consider a code amendment to amend the height requirement for pool screen enclosures. It now restricts, the code now restricts the maximum height to a pool enclosure at 14 feet, and there are a lot of individuals constructing two-story homes that want a full screen enclosure. The board looked at this and is recommending that the council proceed with a code amendment allowing for that difference in the height restriction.
All right, any discussion?
The only discussion I would make at this point is it's been so long since we've had a P&Z meeting, and you know, the recommendations that they make generally came with both the recommendation of the board and staff recommendation, which would be Bill, if he's over here, and also recommendations from the police chief and the fire chief, which usually came through staff. Usually the staff recommendation was the police have no trouble with it, fire has no problem with it, the building department has no trouble with it. So since everybody's here, I mean, we can obviously say that, and I think that's in there to a certain degree. So.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, we looked at it and we thought it was a good
Right.
idea. Bill endorsed it and indeed wrote a memorandum to the P&Z board.
Right.
And we all think it's a good idea.
Okay,
and
so
we'd
staff
recommend
recommends it without hesitation. Okay.
And I was lucky enough to have a discussion with one of the members of the PNC board about
Yeah.
the whole project.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, okay.
So do we have a consensus that we want staff to move forward with drafting an ordinance?
With, yeah, we're changing, changing the
Yes.
ordinance from,
Okay.
so, you want to, we need a motion on that if he's drafting an
It's,
ordinance.
it's not an action item on the,
It's not?
as far as I can tell, we got minutes.
What we can do is, you've obviously reached a consensus on that. We can prepare a draft ordinance for your review, and we'll list it on an upcoming agenda for discussion prior to the public hearing. That's what I would suggest.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that should have been an action item on the agenda.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 2, public hearing of ordinance number 14-636. This is the final reading. Mr. Public.
An ordinance of the City of Port Richey, Florida, amending Section 12-20, penalties assessed for false alarm, Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, providing for codification, severability, and providing for an effective date.
All right, any discussion on this second reading of the ordinance?
Any unlined, underlined changes in there, Joe?
There have been no changes other than the language suggested by the fire chief of adding the fire department into the whereas clause.
I see that now, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Anyone from the public wishing to address this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Do I have a
Motion to approve.
Motion to second, ordinance number 14-636.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I think we beat this one up pretty good.
All in favor?
Aye.
There goes my fire alarm system.
Can hear it now.
What?
Can hear it from here.
All right, agenda item number 3, consideration of bid award, Queener Avenue Lift Station. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, as you recall, this was on a prior agenda. The staff had inadvertently omitted the bid tabulation, which is included now on page 24. It shows J&H Water Stop Utilities, Inc. As the low bidder. There also is a recommendation from C&D Engineering regarding the bid award to J&H Water Stop Utilities. The total bid award is in the amount of $143,847.07. The project is primarily funded by Community Development Block Grant. Funding is available from CDBG in the amount of $125,112, and the remainder of the project costs will be paid for by the city's water and sewer utility fund. I wanted to add that Councilman Rowe today requested of the staff some additional information that has been laid in front of you tonight. That's the supporting information and the bid documents, actual bid documents. It's pretty voluminous. It's in front of you for your review. The work contemplated at the station, the lift station on Queener, is to increase the finished slab elevation to protect the station from stormwater inflow. I wanted to add that that's an important consideration. This station floods in a heavy rainfall event. When it floods, it takes rainwater, pumps it into the force main system, and indeed that ultimately results in a metered wastewater flow that the city of Port Richey is charged for. So time is of the essence on the construction improvements at this project site. The project also includes structural improvements, lining of the existing wet well, installation of new pumps. The pumps in place are under capacity and need to be replaced, and installation of new electrical controls and installation of new valves and ground discharge piping. So we're recommending approval in the amount of $143,847.07 to J&H Water Stop Utilities.
You mentioned with the, I think we had a question last time too pertaining to the communication server. that's tied in to this quote at $7,800. Was that a recommendation that you said?
Yes, that's included in the bid recommendation. What that does is allow this station to be interconnected to the city's existing SCADA system, which means that it can be monitored remotely, it can be alarmed remotely, and ultimately, Pat and I believe that all the stations could and should be connected to the SCADA system for early alarms in the event of a failure. This is one of the major stations. It takes a lot of flow from the east side of the city, east of US 19, and the early alarms are very important. If there's a station failure, personnel need to get there quickly because the station as it's currently constructed is over capacity.
Okay. Discussion.
That was the only question I had.
In the future, can we have these emailed? This is a lot of paper.
We did email it to you, but I wanted to make sure you had it in front of you tonight because it was requested by Councilman Rowe, and I wanted to make sure everybody had the information at the same time.
It's a couple reams.
Well, if we just got this documentation, there's no way I can look at this documentation in front of me now.
Well, what I would add to you is that typically, council consideration is based on the bid tabulation, engineering, and staff recommendation. The documents that you see here contain performance and payment bond. They don't contain any additional information with regard to the unit price items that you see in the recommendation on page 24. If you decide you want to review this and look at the other documents, you certainly can do that, and I'll put it on the next agenda. I don't think you'll see anything in there that's substantially different or meaningful other than what you see on page 24 of the agenda, but you certainly can do that.
Well, I mean, generally, I look for one of two things. I look for a bid tabulation if all things are equal. And if they're not, all things are not equal, then I look for background on it. In other words, if we're buying police cars and we're comparing Dodges with Chevys, then I want to see what the difference is, the different base prices and all of that. If this is a basic project where each one of these 6 companies are building exactly the same thing to spec using exactly the same materials, there's really not a heck of a lot, like you said, to put in here other than bond issues and things like that. Is there?
And that is the case. The contract documents and specifications were for a specific set of construction requirements. The playing field was level for everybody. Every contractor bid on the same project.
Yeah. So, I mean, you want to make some more time looking at it, we can do that. But, the tabulation of bid results, with a recommended contractor and the low bidder, the lowest bid out of, 5, not 6, out of 5 people, that's a no-brainer to me. I mean, as you said, what a lot of people don't understand is that with this particular station and you get flooding, that is literally water pouring down the drain. Money pouring down the drain, because we are now paying Newport Richey to process as wastewater what is flood water, essentially. And it can add up.
Well, and I'm totally aware of that, and I was the first one to approve this because this is all I've been hearing about. I live on the east side, and it's been a problem for our water department. It's been for a long time.
Yeah.
But this is insane, and for me to get this package, I feel like I need to look at it.
That's okay with me. If you want to put it off,
The reason I asked for that today is I know we've found in the past that we've gone through the bid documents, sometimes questions arise. I remember, Mayor, you asked about a generator and some of the things that pertain to that generator as far as service and that. This doesn't have that type of thing, but one thing I did notice is there is some distance between these companies and this city. And I don't know if that would create a problem if we had something later we needed service of some sort. I don't know, will we go out for that? Do they do it? I wanted to know a little more about the companies than I was getting in the spreadsheet. And I don't know, I always thought we had gotten to some extent some of the bid document behind in our packets so that we kind of had an idea what each company was about and where they were coming from. So that's why I asked for it. I didn't expect it to be this thick. However, I did tell Jocelyn that, you know, I would be satisfied with the emailed copy, which I went through. And like I said, I found the major thing for me was some of these are quite a ways from the city, but other than that, I was satisfied with what I saw here.
I can't imagine that there's too many companies nearby Port Richey that do this work, you know, they have to be located all
That's
over.
the
the
nature of what, that's their
state.
mobilization cost right there.
I wanted to just briefly add that this is a community development block grant project. They have spend down requirements, and we have time to put it on another meeting, but we don't have really any additional time. They expect us to spend the money down within a certain time frame. With regard to the contract documents themselves, you'll find that each of the contractors submitted the information that you see in front of you. This is standard information. It includes the performance payment bond, the Department of Business and Professional Regulation licensing for each contractor. This has been gone over thoroughly by the engineer, by the staff, and in addition, the community development block grant personnel. So you certainly can take the time. I don't know what you may actually derive as a benefit from review of this detailed information, but it's there for you to look at, and we were just responding to the request.
After installation, who's going to have the responsibility for maintenance?
The project will have a 1-year warranty on parts, materials, and labor. The performance bond of the contract includes a guarantee by the contractor to back up their warranty. Typically, the city would take over all maintenance, all repair after a 1-year time frame. The project specifications were developed around the City Public Works Department's standard specifications for types of pump, types of valve, electrical control, so that we standardize our equipment in lift stations, which is very important. When we have a lift station failure, it's a critical situation
Yeah, you
in
don't have
every
to-
case.
You don't have to have 10 different type of valves to deal with.
Yes, and so they are standardized specifications. They are not allowed to supply any type of pump.
Substitute.
And that's important from an operation and maintenance perspective and an emergency perspective.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All right. We've got a motion and a second. Anyone from the public wishing to address this issue? Seeing none, all right, bring it back to council. Any further discussion?
I think we received everything, along with what I looked at in 4 or 5 minutes. And I mean, if we have to go through each of these sheets, it's obvious, and I understand why things are going to be requested as such. But you know, I think the material that we received even here, and then to expand here, even when you first look at, I don't know how many pages are here. You know, the insurance, all the things that go along with it. You know, I just think we have to understand that this is what the staff does, and the information is here. It's gone through a process. This was the lowest bidder. Let's get it done.
Okay. Anything else? So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes.
I'm naying this one because
Okay.
I just haven't had the opportunity to read this.
Okay. right.
Just as a very brief comment, if Councilwoman Britton, if you have any comments, concerns, or of any kind with regard to what you see in the documents, please feel free to contact me or Pat Stewart, and we'll clarify those and give you any information you desire.
Yeah, I'm sure I won't, but, you know, I just didn't have the opportunity to really look through it, so I don't feel comfortable approving it, so. At this
Okay.
point.
Well, that was something that was added after. I mean, this was requested by
right.
Terry Rowe.
Yeah.
This wasn't something that came after.
All right, moving on to item number 4, we've got the 2014 street improvement project. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, I would like to request that this item be pulled from the agenda for consideration at an upcoming meeting. There are some details that I'd like to clarify, and you would see that if indeed you approve pulling it from the agenda, you would see it at an upcoming meeting.
Okay. Is that fine with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, finally, the last item is discussion of irrigation issues. I requested this item be put on the agenda again because of the discussions and issues that we've had with respect to the irrigation rates. And I requested Mr. O'Neill provide information regarding usage. And I hope everybody's had an opportunity to look at that. And what's striking about the information that we received on that is a dramatic decline in the irrigation, the gallons used for irrigation. And what explains that is probably multifaceted. I suspect that the cost may have gotten the attention of some individuals with regard to the amount of water they were using. To some extent, that's a good thing because we're required to abide by the watering regulations as well as the conservation component of our permits. Additionally, the season has been such that we've had a lot of rain. So we simply haven't had the necessity to do the watering that we've had some other seasons. But regardless of how much information we tried to convey to the citizens with regard to the lengthy hearings we had on the water study, the notifications that went out in the bills and everything else, the impact of the irrigation rates came as a sticker shock to lots of people out there. And in some cases, if you look at the tables, the rate quadrupled for 28,000 gallons of usage. And again, we've talked about this before, but I think it's somewhat important to reiterate that one of the reasons for a substantial increase in those irrigation rates was the old structure was simply out of sync with the cost of the product. That is, we were charging customers $2.45, I believe, for 1,000 gallons for irrigation, and our cost at the time was $5.49. So for every 1,000 gallons people were using for irrigation, the city was losing $3 just on the cost of purchase of water. That has nothing to do, that doesn't even take into account the fact that there were additional costs for delivering the product, that is the overhead for any utility. So even in the best-case scenario, I think irrigation customers will going to experience at least a doubling or more of the cost of irrigation. One of the things that the city has done is to offer assistance for anybody out there experiencing some difficulty, and we gave a one-time kind of, I don't want to call it rebate, but discount for people who were who had high rates of usage. But if you simply look at the usage today, it's not anywhere comparable to what it was before this the new rate went into effect. Having said that, we still have what I perceive as some concerns for a number of users for irrigation, and in particular, if you look at the rates, Point Pleasant, Sand Pebble are two of the areas where there is substantial use and high cost associated with that. I think part of what we need to do going forward is to, again, to speak with and offer whatever assistance we can as a city to assist those high usage customers with conservation efforts in an effort to look at what they're using, why they're using it, and whether there are things that can be done to decrease the volume. Because especially when you look at some of the condos, it seems when you look at the green space that they're using for irrigation, that the use is disproportionate to what may be needed out there. And if there are ways to assist any customer with conservation, then I think it's an important thing to do. Having said that, again, what we're seeing in the rate usage on irrigation is an anomaly, I believe, because we're in the winter season and because of the particular climate we've got, the winter we've had with rain. So I personally would like to see some kind of relief, if you will, or an effort to provide some lesser costs for irrigation customers. Again, keeping in mind, I understand that the utility has to be solvent. We have to be very careful moving forward on on any changes we make. What I would suggest is that anything we do now would be on a temporary basis until we can further examine what actually materializes as we move into the warmer season and see what the usage is and see if there are things we can address. Having said that, I'd like to see us lower the first tier structure from the current charge of $9.12 to like the $7.01 per 1,000 gallons, and see if that that assists. Understanding that that it costs the city money to do any of that, but I think we worked very hard on the residential rates and tried to make them for the domestic customers as affordable as we could given the economic parameters. And so on the irrigation, I don't think we focused as we necessarily should have, and it has adversely impacted some people, and I think we ought to look at that. So I'll entertain anybody else's comments.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a few comments on that as well. First of all, in regards to the reduction, I would be more in favor of that at a later point. And my reason for that is that it's outlined, and I know Tom will talk about this, it's outlined that there's some other measures that we can take, I think that we should take first, and see what those do. We've already seen some usage numbers come down. The hit that we would take that you're suggesting in relation to the 701 versus the 912 outlines approximately an effect on our budget of $30,000. I think that's quick right off the bat. I know that later and we had talked about this before, matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Terry had mentioned it too, in relation to the CRA, both residential, that the grant program, we talked about some of these sensors, we talked about some other things, we've talked about retrofit, et cetera. I would like to see maybe some of those measures go first, that we talk about an amount that might be available and helping folks move in that direction. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm against reducing what some of these dollar amounts are. I'm not. I just think there should be a first step and other steps to follow if necessary. Let me go into my next questions. And Sal, I'm going to ask you, because this week or last week I requested some numbers, and I want to try to understand these numbers, because these numbers, folks, are outstanding bills, and they total in the thousands of dollars. Sal, I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe you can make some comments. I have those numbers because you gave me those numbers, so I looked at those. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to call you. I don't want to call you on the carpet now, but if you can make a few comments. The first thing I have here is the mobile home rate comparison running totals. And I do have some relief granted totals as well. If you have that, if you don't have that document, you can take mine.
No, I don't need them.
Okay.
Basically, the two different totals that I've sent you, one is basically a non-penalized figure, which is the lower number, and the other set of bills was what they were actually, the bills of what they would be with penalty. And as I stated to the email to you, is that because each of those trailer parks we were making special bills for them because it is, obviously the special situation that those 5 were under, they were paying every month. We would bill them and they would pay. So that's the discretion that, the discretion of either to include the penalties is, obviously, is, for a later time. But I included both sets of numbers so you'd have an understanding of the same numbers that I have. But like I said, the only reason we kept the spreadsheet of without penalty is because at, these trailer parks, whatever we were billing them, they paid every month. So technically, why would they be penalized? So,
Right.
I was told to keep both sets of numbers.
Yeah, because there's some indication on here, I'll throw some out. There's some late charges here that are in the, 20s of thousands.
Well, because,
that are noted, but.
Because the computer will automatically, it's
Right.
it's a 15% penalty
Right.
each month. And obviously, these amounts are, are so high, 15% of, 100,000 is going to be quite a bit, so.
Right, right. Now, in relation to, with the Black Mountain software, I guess is what you used.
Yes.
In the billing system, I'd specifically asked, I forget my first question related to an amount, and then you said, well, where can we start? And I said, well, okay, let's start at anything over $500. Okay. And if I'm looking at these correct, and I'm obviously not going to throw out any names, but would it be fair to say that with what I have and these totals might amount to somewhere around $80,000, that's a fair figure? Or what can you comment about what I particularly see here as balances and past due amounts?
Well, our past due amounts as far as active accounts are constantly changing. At the time that you requested that, I'm constantly, receiving mail, payments online, so those amounts change constantly every single day.
Right.
So the figures that you have at that time, that's what they were. Okay. But as far as our active accounts, like I said, they change constantly. So it could have been 80,000 at that point, but some of our larger users could have paid their bills and dropped that down substantially. So those numbers change constantly. As far as our customers that are inactive and locked, those are dormant, they're locked off, but those were the amounts that were left on the account at the time. So okay. we can't collect on those because they're inactive and they're locked off. So, right. But the active accounts, like I said, are constantly changing.
Mm-hmm. And I thank you for the information.
No problem.
And I understand that, you know, I mean, look, I'm hoping we don't have $100,000 in outstanding bills, but just requesting these, you know, brings us, you know, where we might be. I just have a couple of other comments in relation to the water itself. That the accepted outdoor water use generally in a coastal community is 25 to 35% of the total demand. This kind of coincides with our bulk agreement because basically we're covering part of our usage and obviously irrigation, which we didn't get a chance to talk about too much when we had Burton and Associates here, which is why we're kind of going over it now. Some of these figures I don't think we actually had seen at that time. That we're basically producing 400,000 or 500,000 gallons of per day with an average demand. And in other words, everything that we get outside of that, which might be irrigation, really comes into play and makes it that important. So again, just going back to that particular rate structure, and I'm not trying to rule that out, but we've already taken some steps that, as you've indicated, Mayor, we see those reductions in usage, and they're pretty good reduction numbers. I myself in Sand Pebble in the townhomes, we've basically turned it off. You know, we I think are going to also look at what incentives might be there to keep us educated on the fact how much do we really need to use with what we have. And I think that's a question for, we had said how many irrigation numbers we actually had, but that's a question for every person to ask. And there have been requests from folks, and we've actually gone out there, I've seen the emails, that we've actually gone out to the homes and helped these folks. And I hope, I'm going to go back actually and look at some of those numbers of the folks that had called because they're in here. I'm sure that that was a help for them. I know there were some Harbor Isles people, some Harbor Point people, Sand Pebble, et cetera. I'll leave it at that for now. I just wanted to highlight those couple things.
Okay, Nancy?
I think we have to look at the, I disagree with you. I think that people need some relief. But we also, I do agree with the fact that we had a lot of people that were utilizing water at will. Oftentimes you set the system and you never look at it again. And so were there people that were not following the water restriction rules? You betcha. But there are people out there that, like you said, have shut their systems off, and we don't want that either. So I'm in disagreement of not doing anything at this point. I agree with the mayor that something needs to be done temporarily to give them some relief.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with that also. I think that some relief, especially just like in potable water for the low-end users, is definitely in order to start them off, I believe, at a rate that's equivalent to the 9,000 gallon rate, you know, as soon as they turn on their meter. This is from notes from last week. That's not in here anywhere. But, you know, it's just not, it's too much for somebody who's doing, you know, who has a small home and is doing a reasonable amount and is following the rules, or a medium-sized home and is watering, you know, once a week or twice a week, whatever the rules are, up to an inch. I think that gives them a lot of relief. But you're going to see that more as time comes. But, you know, it's a relief that actually everybody's getting, at least on their first $7,000. So, I mean, everybody's getting some relief if we grant that tier and knock off a couple of bucks, $1,000 there. You know, so that's helpful to everybody. Obviously, this is still a work in progress. It still is a work in progress. But something that, you know, concrete that we can do right now is changing that first tier.
Okay, and I want to just comment briefly that the estimate of the loss of revenue of $30,000 is projected over a year's basis, and I'm not proposing that we do this relief for a year's period of time. I'm suggesting that we do it something like 4 months or 6 months or some interval like that, so we can have a better history of the usage, as well as being proactive with making sure that we've addressed everyone that we can,
Right.
or that wants our help, in looking to find economical ways to water their lawns or irrigate as necessary. Mr. O'Neill provided me with some estimates of the SwiftMud guidelines, I believe, for irrigation. And he can probably speak to it better than I can, but the recommendations are a half an inch an acre every 2 weeks. Well, most residential homes don't have anywhere near that, especially when you take in the footprint of the house. So his estimate is that like 1/8 of an acre may be green space on an ordinary residential lot. And if that's the case, then it may take something like 8,000 gallons per month to irrigate on a once per week basis. So, you know, I just think that if we can, and I understand your point, Steve, that, you know, we could do it the other way, which is to go ahead and try to be continue to be proactive and do it on the back end. But I think a lot of users have simply shut off their irrigation systems because of the cost. And obviously, we have a utility enterprise to run that needs to be solvent, but we also need to look at how we impact the best we can. It's, you know, it brings to mind to some extent, although it's not in the same category, but when you're talking about flood insurance rates, when they come all at once and you get the shock, you know, are there other ways to address this that make sense given all the factors we have to consider? And so I'm just suggesting that we do some kind of reduction on a temporary basis and then re-examine what that has produced, or you know, whether it makes sense, or what else we need to do.
Well, I mean, I can agree, and I know Terry wants to speak with us, when you say 3 or 4 months, but again, I just think, you know, I've sat up here a long time, and I know, you know, and living in Sandpub, I know a lot of the areas that it's been excessive. And it's been excessive because, quite frankly, it's been cheap. And obviously, it's been too cheap. And that's why, again, I just think this is a kind of a quick knee-jerk reaction that, you know, we can pause for a minute. Look, I'm all for coming down on the rates. I just think we went forward to this. We hired Burton. We got their opinion. In reading what has been given to us, it seems clear from the staff that their recommendation is also to wait and to go with what these CRA dollars might provide. Tom can speak to that. At least that's the message I got from reading this. If a reduction is needed down the road, I'd be the first to vote for it, but I can't vote for it now.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody from the audience wanting to speak to this issue?
Jim Priest, 5100 Sunset Boulevard. You've all heard me speak, you know, before about this up here. I think the analogy, okay, of the sticker shock, as you know, with the flood insurance, is a very valid analogy. The issue that I had with it in here, that it was just too much at one time. Was it an error to be charging that little? Probably was over a number of years. There's no question about that. With all due respect to with Councilman O'Neill, though, it's now 4 months down the road. I honestly don't see this as knee-jerk. You know, I know, you know, when I used to sit on that side of the dais in there, I said, my pat statement was, you know, I know government rolls slow, but man, it needs to roll some. And you know, taking 4 months to finally, you know, make a decision, make something happen in here, I don't think it's, knee-jerk. With all due respect, sir, on in there, I just think something needed to be done. I agree with you, more needs to happen, though, besides just a rate. I think you do have to, identify better avenues of conservancy, in here, but, and that's for everybody's, case in here. I mean, we all happen to fertilize our lawns and such like this, and at the end of the day, I don't think anybody likes the way the river looks during the summer. It's pretty rough. Our nitrogen content in the river just blows through the roof in here, and I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it's been this winter, even though it's been a long winter, but to be able to see the bottom of it all the way across has been wonderful. It really has, and haven't done that in a lot of years. But I know come summer, when there will be back to the, I should say, the little tannic-looking water in here. But I do appreciate the council's effort. Thank you.
Ms. Gray.
Phyllis Gray, Sand Pebble. I speak on behalf of Phase 1, of which I am the president. It was a considerable shock to us because we had already fixed our budget for the new year. And to have this happen in November, fortunately, we have an excellent reserve system, and we had a very, very good budget committee, and we managed to pay our bills. We immediately became proactive. Yes, we were watering too much. When you live in a community like Sand Pebble, you have to keep up an image. And so those sprinklers were going on at 2 o'clock in the morning and coming off at 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was pretty much every other night. And now we have stopped that after speaking with the city manager, and he gave me some guidelines, and we now only water once a week. We also took notice of the 2 pools that we have on the property. Both are the exact same size. There's absolutely nothing different. The one pool was using 6,000 gallons a month. The other pool was 22,000. So when we started seeing what was coming in with the irrigation rates, something was definitely wrong. It had to be. Well, of course it had to be. There was a crack that ran from the steps going into the pool at the low end all the way over around to the ladder, which is at the deep end. And we had a substantial water leak. We hired a company that came, a leak detection company, and sure enough, he found the crack, and he found where all of this water is leaking. And we now have addressed the issue, and at our meeting come Monday, we will be talking about it. In the meantime, the crack cannot be fixed because it's a Band-Aid. But we're aware. And what happened when the increase hit us so quickly, we became aware. We never looked before. We never had to look before. You get a bill, you pay it. It's within budget, you're okay. But then, when this increase came in, we said, well, where is this money coming from? It is so much higher than what we had budgeted for. And that forced us to find the reasons. And of course, that one pool is one of the reasons. But I want you to know that at least my phase 1, has greatly reduced our irrigation. And I'm hoping that the other communities that are within the Sand Pebble, Harbor Point, I know the townhomes have done their share. So I think it's made the people aware of what you really, really need to do. You talk about conservation, you talk about recycling and save the energy, all of that. Well, you really have to take a look at the water that you're using at the same time. So it was a wake-up call, and thank you for it.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to address the
You need
fact.
to state your name and your address.
Kathy Todd, 5113 Mallet Drive.
Thank you.
I'd just like to state the fact that I agree with Ms. Phyllis, who I've not had the pleasure of meeting, or Mr. Priest yet, which I hope I get to. I do agree with her. I think they live in beautiful homes. I think their water should be beautiful. I think we should make the whole city beautiful. I agree with you. I think that's a great idea. I think our rates should be adjusted at some point. That's an awesome idea because it was such a shock. So what I'd like to say is that out of the goodness of your heart or whatever your means are behind it, I support you and I agree with you. And Mr. Steve O'Neill, if you'd like to pay some of our cheap water bills, I'd gladly give them to you. We do have them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Well, I'll just say too, I mean, as far as usage, and it's indicated, I mean, I'll say to Phyllis, I pulled the records, even just the front of the clubhouse for February, 125,000 gallons. So as you've said, reducing it, they need to check it again, because I've got the count right here, and we're gonna look at it too in the townhomes. But, I think we really have to take advantage of what is being offered by the city, and that's the assistance in all these areas, because I pulled numbers. I still see some high numbers.
Yes, yeah. They just stick out. You see the big numbers, some areas where the usage is really substantial, and efforts need to be taken to address those things.
And big and small. I mean,
Exactly,
whether it's Sand
exactly.
Pebble or residential home or
Exactly.
wherever, we want to help everybody in getting what they need down. As you've said, Swift Mud has provided some of this information. And at our CRA, and again, I know we're looking to see what date that's going to be. We've got several items to consider, so I hope
Right.
that's coming up soon.
I just want to bring a quick point up. I requested this from city 17 times. This has been my pet peeve for years and years and years, about how I know that we make such a huge attempt to let people know what's going on, and people will swear up and down that, no, you're not telling us anything. 17 times, or more probably, but 17 that I've counted in here, and I may be miscalculating, give or take, but close to 17 times, we had alerted the community that we were working on rate increases for the city water. In August and September, it was on our water bills. Sits right here on the water bill and says that there is a rate increase meeting on 10/15, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And also, if we could put on the agenda the tenant-landlord relationship for the next agenda for the water department.
Okay, there's no vote required on this item. It's just that city staff were asking for direction. And so,
Well, it is an action item. We can take action if we want to.
I think we should.
council is requested to provide direction to the staff on its preference on irrigation rates for the city customers. Okay, so do I have a motion?
I have a motion for $7.01 per 1,000 gallons for the new irrigation rate, effective immediately.
Do you want to set a time?
For what tier?
For the first tier,
For the lowest irrigation rate tier.
for the lowest irrigation rate.
Okay.
For how long? Is there for how long going along with that, or is this forever?
Can I interject here in a point of order? I would say that if we're doing it permanently, we're essentially modifying a code, and we are now rewriting an ordinance. If we do it per resolution for a period of time, just to grant some sort of relief, we could do by resolution. That would be my understanding.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to inclusive the period of 4 months and to be reviewed at that time.
Okay.
For purposes of clarification, are you talking about a tier of 0 to 8,000 gallons or a 0 to 12,000 gallon rate?
0 to 8.
Okay.
I'll second
Okay.
the motion.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Go out to public.
I already had,
okay.
oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
I got, you're right. We have a motion, we still need to invite any public participation for the final, before the final vote. Yes, Mr. Todd.
Thank you, Todd, 513 Mallet Drive. As far as the water issue goes, people that take care of their homes, water their flowers, and make their yards look like they are, that's what keeps our property values up. They should be rewarded and commended for that. That's what keeps your value of your property up. That's what we all need to realize. I mean, I realize it. It's very simple. Anyone that waters their lawn, spends all that money for flowers, I thank them. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, now we have a motion and a second. We have a motion to temporarily reduce the first tier, or the first 8,000 gallons to the
Of
first
irrigation
tier.
rate, of the irrigation rate
Yeah,
to
irrigation
701 for 4
701
months.
For a
per
limited
1,000
period of time.
Clarification, if we're adjusting it from 0 to 8,000, we're also gonna have to have a modification to the next tier, so it reflects 8,001 to the 12,000.
Yes,
The
yes, yeah.
$9.12 tier, so
You're
we're
right.
gonna have to modify that as well.
Because there's not an existing 0 to 8 tier now.
What we have currently is a 0 to 12.
So then we would need a 8,001
To 12,000.
To 12,000.
At what appears to be the $9.12
Right.
rate, which is what it currently.
Which is what it
now.
would stay at.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay, I'm going to amend my motion. Okay, I'd like to change the city utility financial model to a lower rate from 0 to 8,000 gallons to $7.01 per 1,000 gallons as a new irrigation rate for Tier 1, for the first tier. And then from 8,001 gallons to 12,000 gallons to $9.12 per 1,000 gallons.
And is that?
For a
for
4-month
months?
period.
Just so I can clarify the record, there is a reduction for the 0 to 8,000, and the 8,001 to 12,000 is unchanged.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to clarify, because if there's any increases per statute, we have to go through all the notices. So I just want the record to be clear that there are no increases. This is specifically a decrease in the rate.
Correct. I second the amendment.
Would you like me to specify a date that we're going to go out 4 months? Or
4 billing months from now.
well,
I don't know what your billing schedule is, Sal.
The 15th.
Actually, we're going to be billing this Friday. I'd have to get in touch with Black Mountain Software, which I will do tomorrow morning, to see if I could do it for this billing, but I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, that's pretty tight.
Yeah.
That's pretty tight. So I would say that, this billing if we can. If not, it's going to have to be subsequent billings.
You could say effective the first billing cycle in April, or whatever's easiest for them to work out, just to give them some time.
Well, I mean,
I-
he's going to give it a shot,
I will call them first thing tomorrow morning, but I mean, I can be honest, I don't think they can make that
Yeah,
change.
that's pretty tough.
In just a couple of days, because, I can't guarantee that. We could definitely have this by April and continue 4 months from April.
Okay.
But
I would recommend that you start it in April, and the reason that I'm saying that is it would be more of a benefit to the customers
really
because
would. Yeah, how do I-
their irrigation needs will increase for
Right,
that form.
yeah,
They
yeah.
haven't been irrigating right now because it's cooler and we've had
And
rainfall.
we've had rain. Yeah.
so what language is necessary, Sal, to clarify that for you? Beginning of the first billing cycle in April?
Yeah, the first billing cycle in April, that would be fine. And as far, as what the tiers, as long as the tiers are now set at the first 0 to 8, 7:01, and then 8,001 to 12 is at 9:12.
Okay.
That's all they'll need to clarify that, because I need that documentation to send to them tomorrow morning.
Okay. All right. That encapsulated your motion, did it? Did it
Yes.
not, Ms. Britton? Yes, so we got a motion.
I second the encapsulated motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I vote nay.
Anything additional before we adjourn?
Oh,
Yes, Nancy?
we need to set a date for the next CRA meeting,
Next year.
so get your books out. CRA meeting.
We can do one the first week of April, if you'd like to. It can be on Tuesday the 1st or Thursday the 3rd.
It's April Fool's Day.
I'm sorry?
It's April Fool's Day.
We did not have a MAP meeting in April. The next MAP meeting
Sounds
is in
about right.
May, so that whole first week in April is clear.
Is Tuesday a good time?
First is good for me, rather than
Mr. Rowe, is Tuesday a good day for you?
It's fine.
Everybody?
Good as any.
Okay, 7 PM or 6:30?
7.
So,
How can you go wrong?
so what's the agreement? It is,
Seems to
7
be April
PM,
1st to
April
7 PM.
1st.
okay?
Tuesday, April 1st, CRA.
Okay?
Anybody have any desires as to what they'd like to have on the CRA meeting? So we can get the agenda rolling. If not, please let Mr.
All that CRA stuff that builds up, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got the pier.
I know you've got some things that.
We definitely
Yes,
need
sir.
to talk about the piers.
The pier, the other pier, 2 piers.
Well, let's,
Nick's
I
Park.
guess, the,
Got the piers, Nick's Park.
yeah, we've got the sensors for the irrigation.
Yes.
That we could look at that again,
Right.
okay? That should be enough to,
Funding, right.
yeah.
Do we have anything in relation to Waterfront Park? Do we still have some?
If you can get what.
Well, what I think I'm hearing is that you'd like to have the Waterfront Park Pier on that agenda, or am I mistaken on that?
I mean, you know, last time we just kind of threw them all together, you know, I mean, you know, I don't know if there's a need to, a separate agenda item, those things.
Yeah,
I mean,
we could
'cause
just
I
list
don't-
them all.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's a lot of stuff.
Okay, if
The
there's
only
nothing.
thing I have
yeah.
left is, we talked about Pete Schatzel coming in here last meeting. Do we have any progress on that?
Yes, we have asked Mr. Schatzel. Unfortunately, this is income tax season, and the earliest date that he can commit to is May 13. We tried to get him as soon as possible, and he's extremely busy, and his calendar is filled until that point. But it is scheduled at this point for a definite commitment from him for May 13.
Okay. If there's nothing further, we stand adjourned.
Stand adjourned.